Bookend.
Bookend. This is the St. Louis Linux user group, St. Louis LUG. Today's date is Thursday, the 19th of, check that date. Thursday, the 18th of the 19th. Hold on. Can't even get my bookend straight.
It's 19th, Gary. Good grief.
Yeah. Thursday, September the 19th, 2024. This is our monthly meeting, usually the third Thursday of the month, or it's always a week, 8 days after the general meeting. And tonight we have Sean Twiehaus. He's going to do our presentation on modern terminal showdown, KiTTY versus Wezterm. And let's see, do we have to start a second recording?
No, so I heard Stan do it.
Okay.
I guess I did.
We guess so. And with that, I guess we'll turn it over to Sean. Oh, well, first off.
Wait a minute. God, good grief, Gary. Don't you know the procedure?
No, I don't.
Son of a gun.
He just wants to get going, Stan.
Yes.
He's got a hot date, probably.
Okay, so back to the procedure.
If it's alive and breathing, it's what he's dating.
Yeah. Okay, back to the procedure. Okay.
I guess.
Have we got a slide deck for that?
Somewhere.
Somewhere under the rainbow.
Oy vey.
CC.
Well, anyway, I guess first off, I know usually we talk about the calendar. I don't have anything to mention from the calendar. Anybody else have anything they saw on the calendar that looked interesting? Hearing nothing, move on. Any other announcements? Things coming up that people know in town or online that they'd like to point out? Okay, not hearing anything there. Let's see. Lee, Stan, do either of you know any changes in our calendar that are coming up? Anything different coming up in the next coming weeks?
I have no idea. I've been so busy for the last 3 weeks. I don't know which end is up.
Okay. I think excuse me. Next Tuesday the 24th, that's our new Linux user group meeting. The nice thing about that meeting is it does not have a set topic. There isn't a speaker for the prepared presentation, but rather it's whoever comes to the meeting who says that they are the newest user of Linux. They get to ask the first question, and then everybody else is challenged to come up with a good answer to that question. So, and of course, we really appreciate, some of the more experienced users coming, because they're the ones who actually have the best conversation. And a lot of times the more experienced people, will always remark that, wow, the conversation was really good, because, it was a simple question or something that, somebody who's new might ask, but they learned something from the discussion, the way it went. So definitely both new users and old users should come to that meeting. That's next Tuesday night. Starts at 6:30. Right. Anything else that we should be pointing out? While people are thinking of that, another thing we do is do a front end Q&A. There's plenty of time, usually after the presentation, both to talk about the presenter's topic, but then we, as we branch off, we can get to more general topics afterwards. But excuse me, where that cough is coming from. But if somebody has a topic, a question that they want to state here in the front, if they have to go early or something, this might be a time to get in a couple of quick questions. And I'm not hearing anything. Okay, nobody has any questions.
Maybe we ought to start the show.
Okay. Excuse me. I apologize for this cough. Like I said, let me get rid of this. All right. Sean, I will turn it over to you and you can tell us all about the nice kitty and his friend Wezterm. So over to you. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. My name is Sean Twiehaus, and today I'm going to be doing a presentation on Terminal Showdown, KiTTY versus Wezterm. That's right. We're going to pit these two open source modern terminal applications head to head and see who comes out on top. But before we do that, just one slide about me. So I was a systems administrator for several years, and I saw the transition happening to the cloud and DevOps and all that. And I said, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. And so I noped out into software development. My current role is technical lead. I guess I'm an aspiring solution architect. So if you know anybody in that space, feel free to introduce me if you can. That's enough about me. Let's talk about you. Who is this talk for? I think this talk is for anybody who's been using the same terminal application for more than 5 years. Anyone who's using the default terminal application that came with their operating system, or anybody who spends a lot of time in the command line environment. If you're one of those people, this talk might benefit you. So, modern terminal.
Same terminal application logged in for 5 years. That probably qualifies then.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. I'd say. So, modern terminal applications have a ton of features. I have the tip of the iceberg listed here, and obviously I'm not going to be able to cover both of these terminals at any great depth, but I will hopefully give a tour, an overview, something to kind of get you interested, and then you can go off on your own to dive in and explore on your own. So the first terminal that we're going to talk about today is called KiTTY, KiTTY, KiTTY. It is open source under the GPL v3 license. It's written in Python and C. The first commit to the GitHub repository was on October 2016. The developer, whose name I am hopefully not getting too far wrong, is Kovid Goyal. And something notable about him, he is also the primary developer of Calibre, which is a ebook manager software.
Yeah, I've been using, I always thought it was Calibre, but I've been using that for years.
Yeah, he he has a donate button on there, and apparently he makes pretty good money off that software from what I've heard recently on a podcast. So okay, and you should be seeing my key presses as well on a little bar at the bottom here. Is everybody seeing that? You see this down here?
Yes,
Control.
yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because I'm going to be doing a lot of keyboard shortcuts because this is, terminal applications. And so it'll display what I'm typing in down there at the bottom. So this is KiTTY right here. And I don't know if we noticed the startup time, but I think it's pretty good. There's some amount of startup time that I'm willing once we get past like a certain amount of time, it gets annoying for me. Like when an application takes too long to start up. And my desktop here is pretty old. The CPU is from 2016. So it is a pretty old desktop, and I still think KiTTY starts up pretty fast. So I'm trying to show off the startup time here. Even on my old machine and screen sharing on Zoom, it starts up, fast enough for me. I don't know. I don't know if that would be the same for you, but we'll compare them as we go, the startup times and stuff like that. So the first thing I want to talk about with KiTTY, and this is, I'm just going to type it in here. This is KiTTY, is the tabs. So in a browser, in a web browser, if you hit Control T, that opens up a new tab, right? Everybody probably knows that. If you hit Control W, that closes a tab. If you do Control Tab, that cycles you through your tabs. If you do Control Shift Tab, that cycles you backwards through your tabs, right? And so I think a lot of people are familiar with these shortcuts because everybody uses a web browser. And I really like that the terminal applications have pretty much adopted these as well. So here in KiTTY, if I do Control Shift T, that opens a new tab. And I can open up, of course, very many of them. And
Oh, that's the tabs down at the bottom. Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna make this a little bit, I'm gonna put it more to the middle of the screen. So this down here, these little white things are the different tabs. Let me move it up just a bit. Okay, and I can click on them too. So I can click on this tab. Let me go to like my downloads folder or something. And then in this one, I'll go to my documents folder. And in this one, I'll go to my code folder so we can kind of tell them apart. Okay, so I have 3 tabs down here now. And I can click on them. I can do Control Tab to cycle through them, just like any web browser. I can do Control Shift Tab to cycle backwards. So I can use keyboard shortcuts to cycle back and forward between the different tabs. And then since this is KiTTY, it has to be extra. So I can go Control Shift period. And what that did was that moved the download. Downloads used to be the first tab over here, and now it's the second tab. And if I do Control Shift comma, you see now it's back. So what that's doing is that's moving the tabs forward and backwards. So you can rearrange the order of the tabs, I guess. I could see like a very narrow case where that might be useful. But yeah, I really like that it uses pretty much the same keyboard shortcuts as the browser, and it has all the tab manipulation functionality that I would really ever want. So pretty cool there. Now, another thing you can do with these modern terminal applications, and I'm going to show it off in KiTTY, is splits or panes. So here I'm making multiple splits by hitting Control Shift Enter. And for the most part, I'm trying to demonstrate the default keyboard shortcuts that come out of the box, but not always. But for the most part, I am. Like that one is a default. And so now you see I have several panes here that I can do several different things. I could run, I don't know, top or something. Okay. And then if you notice, they all kind of set up in this weird layout where we have the big one across the top, and then we have these 3 little ones. With KiTTY, at least out of the box by default, you can't really control how the splits open. At least I haven't got that far yet. So they just kind of open like this. But what you can do is you can push Control Shift L. And what this is going to do is this is going to cycle through different layouts for the split. So if I hit Control Shift L again, now it's in this kind of columnar layout or something. And if I do Control Shift L, this is a stacked layout here. So all those splits are still open, but we're kind of like zoomed in on the one that my cursor was in when I hit Control Shift L. And now we're back at this kind of layout. And we've pretty much cycled through them all. And this is what I do, right? This is the most I do as far as splits in a realistic scenario. I'll have my main split over here. I'll have one more to the side. And then if I'm really doing something strange, I'll have a third one down here. But for the most part, when I'm using splits in my terminal, I'm just using 2. Okay. And so if we want to move back and forth between the splits using our keyboard, we can do Control Shift bracket. So that's opening bracket, and that's closing bracket. So I'm moving back and forth between the splits using keyboard shortcuts. And because this is KiTTY, and KiTTY is of course extra, we can also move the panes. So if I do so right now my cursor is in this bottom one, okay, this bottom that's in my home directory. If I do Control Shift B, that's gonna move the split back, which I don't really understand what backwards and forwards is in a situation like this, but you can see it moved it up. And then if I hit Control Shift F, it'll move it forward. And so you can kind of like do this weird, you can like rotate your splits. So like if you want to split to be in a certain spot in your window, you can like rotate them around. And then you can cycle through, you know, the different layouts. And I got to tell you, this is much more terminal split functionality than I need, right? Like I literally need 2 or 3 splits. That's it. I don't need all this. So it more than meets my needs for any type of crazy split stuff. But one thing I absolutely need as far as splits go is, let me close this. So now I'm down to 1 split. One thing that I do all the time is like, let's go into the code directory for the new site. And so what I'll usually do is I'll do some command that like will steal the terminal. And then, oh, hold on, next. Okay, try that again. Okay, I'll do some command that will steal the terminal. And then I'll be like, crap, I wanted to do more things in the terminal. So what I do is I hit Control Alt Enter. This is a custom shortcut that I made. Control Alt Enter. And what it does is it opens the split, but importantly, it opens the split in the same directory. So like in this split, I'm running a build. And then in my other split that I just opened over here, I can run, you know, lint or what, you know, I could do something else, anything else while that's happening. Because I don't know if you're like, you're probably way smarter than me, so this probably never happens to you, but I always like run some command that I know it's going to take the shell, but like for some reason I don't think ahead to like put it in the background or something like that. And so I run some command, I'm like, oh yeah, I lost my cursor here. And so then being able to open up a new split in the exact same directory is like super convenient for me. Because it's in the same directory, I could just like go right back to whatever I was trying to do before. Okay. So that's tabs and splits. Oh, and also if I open up a bunch of splits here and then I go to the next tab, you see that the splits are gone, right? So the splits are per tab. So within a tab, you have the splits. So that's how that works. So let me go ahead and, all right, now I mentioned that Control Alt Enter keyboard shortcut, the one that opens the split in the same directory, that's a custom one that I made. And so now would probably be a good time to talk about KiTTY's config file. So once you install KiTTY, it puts a config file in this directory right here. So it's the home directory .config/KiTTY/kitty.conf. And this file is huge. Okay, if we go to the bottom, this file is like 2,500 lines long. Okay, it is a huge config file. If you are an Arch user or someone like that, someone who loves to, you know, tweak every little setting and get everything set up just perfectly, I think that you're really going to like KiTTY. I mean, the config file is over 2,000 lines long. You can configure a lot of stuff, you know, with KiTTY. So if you're one of those people, this is where you want to go. By the same token, if you're one of these people that are that way and don't like it about yourself, like if you want to just try to, every time you try to get work done, you end up fiddling with your settings, stay away. You might want to stay away because you might get kind of sucked into fiddling with KiTTY instead of doing whatever work you're trying to do. So just something to be aware of. Now this line right here is the one that configures that keyboard shortcut to open a new split in the same directory. So the syntax here is really straightforward. It's just the word map, and then it's the key binding you want. So in my case, it's Control Alt Enter, and then the word launch. And by default, KiTTY launches a new split. You can also tell it to like launch a new tab or whatever. And then so I'm just telling it launch, which by default launches a new split. and then I'm giving it --cwd, the current working directory. And I'm saying set the current working directory to the current directory, I guess. And so really straightforward syntax. You know, this file is so well commented, to be honest. Like the comments around these config items is honestly really good, really, really good. But if you're somebody who doesn't like having a config file with a bunch of comments, if you think this is just a bunch of noise and you don't want it, you could delete all those comments out of your config file, because KiTTY has a ton of man pages. So here I did man kit tab, and it, you know, bash kind of pre-filled all these, or shows me all the possible things that it could complete. And there are a ton of man pages and documentation for KiTTY. And if we look at the man page for kitty.conf, we'll see this is the exact same thing that's commented out in that config file. So if you want to delete all those, comments out of your config file, you can just use this and you'll have the same, pretty much the same experience. So it's either way you want to go. You'll notice a lot of these man pages start with kitten. And kitten, I don't really understand it. I think they're just Python programs that are kind of built in to KiTTY. So when you install KiTTY, you get a bunch of these kittens, and these kittens are used to basically control the terminal. And KiTTY has this really advanced functionality where you can like remote control the terminal. So like if you have this terminal installed on like a remote system, you can like literally control the terminal remotely. I haven't got nearly that advanced with it, but man, that's crazy. And one of these kittens is the way, and by calling these kittens is sort of how you do that. Like I think this launch one right here, I could be wrong, I think this launch one right here is the one that I'm calling to open that new split in the same directory. So tons of great documentation, very well commented config file. At least the configuration stuff that I've seen, the syntax seems pretty straightforward. 2 thumbs up there. Really, really good. Okay, so that's KiTTY. I'm going to go ahead and close KiTTY down and go back to my slides, because the next terminal we need to talk about is Wezterm. So Wezterm is open source. It's under an MIT license. It's written in Rust, which I'm sure Ed will be happy about. The first commit on GitHub was in December 2017, so it's about 1 year younger than KiTTY, but they're both pretty established projects. The lead developer's name is Wes Furlong. Something notable about him, he was on the PHP core team in the early aughts. And let's check out Wezterm. So let's take a look at the startup time here for Wezterm. So I'm going to start it up. It's pretty much on par with KiTTY, I'd say. Maybe it's a little bit faster. I think it is a little bit faster to start up than KiTTY, but it also doesn't start full screen. KiTTY starts full screen, which I kind of like that. And Wezterm doesn't seem to start full screen on my system. But I can full screen it, and I'll blow up the font. And let's go through very similar stuff with Wezterm. So just like with KiTTY, they've adopted the similar keyboard shortcuts to the browser. So I can do for tab manipulation. So I can do Control-Shift-T to create new tabs. I can do Control-Shift-W to kill tabs, just like the browser. I can do Control-Tab to cycle forward. I can do Control-Shift-Tab to cycle backwards. So all of this is just like any web browser, just like KiTTY. They're the same. As far as Wezterm goes, I didn't see any way out of the box to kind of move the tabs forward and backward like KiTTY has, you know, but I mean, how often are you really going to use that anyway? But I didn't see that out of the box. It could be there and I just missed it. So yeah, as far as tab functionality goes, they're essentially on par, you know. Wezterm also has splits, just like Kit. Oh, does somebody have a comment?
They had a question in the chat. Excuse me. I still can't get rid of this cough. I apologize. Question was, does it have to start full screen?
KiTTY.
KiTTY, which I realize is the last one, be configured to not start full screen. And have we lost sound? Or you
Oh,
just
sorry, I was muted.
okay?
Oh, dang it. Okay. So it looks like KiTTY starts however you had it last time for me. So like you see right now, I don't have it maximized. And so when I start it, it's not maximized. But when I maximize it and close it, then the next time I start it, it's going to start maximized. So however you closed it, that's how it'll open. Wezterm doesn't seem to do that. Wezterm seems to always start minimized. Yeah, but it does start up slightly faster. So
There's also an answer in the chat from Steve Lift, excuse me. He said on his machine, he's running Void Linux, and neither KiTTY nor Wezterm opens full screen.
gotcha. Yeah. And I think it might have to do with whether you're running X11 or Wayland as well, which we'll get into that slightly in a little while.
Yep.
Not deeply. Okay, all right, so back to Wezterm. So we are on par as far as tab functionality goes. I don't think you can use the mouse to change somebody asked. I don't think you can use the mouse to change the tab position in either of them. You can use the mouse to open new tabs in both of them. I don't know if you can close a tab with the mouse in KiTTY. Let me double check. Oh yeah, you can. If you middle click on the tab in KiTTY, you'll close it. And that's the same as a web browser, right? If you're on a tab in the web browser and you do your scroll wheel, if you click down your scroll wheel, that closes the tab. And so that's the same in both of these terminals as well. If you click with the scroll wheel, that will close the tab. Wezterm also has the X you can click on to close the tab. And they both have ways to open new tabs with the mouse as well. But let's talk about splits. So Wezterm, like KiTTY, Wezterm can also do splits. But with KiTTY, you like open the split and then you move it however you want it. But with Wezterm, it's different. You have to think about how you want the split before you open it, right? And that's because there's actually two different keyboard shortcuts here. So the first one is Alt, Control, Shift, %. So all modifiers. Yeah, and all the modifiers. And then that opens a vertical split like we see here. But then if I do Alt, Control, Shift, quote, that opens a horizontal split. And once they're open, I didn't look super hard, but I didn't see a way out of the box to move them around once they're open. So you just have to think about how you want them open and then use the corresponding keyboard shortcut. Whereas with KiTTY, you open them and then you move them around after. So that's really down to personal preference. For me, I probably like the Wezterm way a little bit better. But that's just because I'm used to Vim, right? In Vim, you open up, there's different commands for opening up a horizontal split or a vertical split. And so this is much more familiar for Vim users, probably, than KiTTY is. But, and like I said, as far as splits go, I only ever do like 2 or 3. I had to write that mapping in KiTTY to get it to open a new split in the same directory. but Wezterm does that out of the box. So if I do Alt Control Shift %, you see I was in documents over here, and now I'm in documents over here. And that's just out of the box. I didn't configure anything to make that happen. So it's the same thing. If I was running a build on my left split, and I'm like, oh crap, I lost my, it took my terminal's gone. I can do a new split, same directory, keep going right where I left off. So both of them support that. To me, is a crucial feature. Because sometimes when you run a command, even if you background it with Control Z, it's still spitting out crap to the terminal, right? So you can't really use that terminal still. So Control Z doesn't super save you there. Okay, so let's take a look at Wezterm's configuration file. Oh, CD, no. So what you might notice right away is that Wezterm's config file is written in Lua. Lua is a full-fledged programming language, which means that this is basically the terminal version of Emacs, right? Because what everybody loves about Emacs is that your config file is a full-blown programming language. So you can program Emacs. Well, you can program Wezterm, right? Because this is Lua. It's a full-blown programming language. And if you go to Wezterm's website, they have a full Lua reference thing here where you can let's see. So here's the Lua functions or whatever you would call to get different information about let me zoom this in a little bit, about whatever tab. So if you want to get some tab information, I think this is the Lua code that you would write. You would call tab ID or tab index or something. And there's just a bunch of this. They have their own Wezterm modules that you can call to make command the terminal to do different things. And so to me, this is like the Emacs of terminals because your config is a full-blown programming language. And here I just have a very simple mapping. I think, oh, maybe I forgot to show it. Yeah, so the Wezterm config, sorry, Steve Litt is asking in chat, where is the Wezterm config file? So when I installed Wezterm, it did not create a config file automatically. I had to create it myself, and I had to create the directory too. And you can see in the bottom left of the screen right now where that is. It's .config/Wezterm/Wezterm.lua. And this is the basic syntax for creating a custom keyboard shortcut. So you specify the key, you specify any modifiers using this kind of weird, I don't know, to me this is kind of a weird syntax with the bar in the middle. And then you specify what basically Wezterm kind of function or action you want to do. And so what this one does, if I create a new split, let's create several. And then if I do, what is it? Control-Alt-Z, it zooms in. So it's zooming in to whatever split I'm currently on. And then, oh, I don't think I showed it, but for Wezterm, I think the default keyboard shortcut is Control, Shift, and then the arrow keys is how you move between the splits with a keyboard. Control, Shift, and the arrow keys. Whereas KiTTY, you do Control, Shift, and then the brackets. So, it's just functionally equivalent there. Okay, so that's the config file. Stan is asking, where is it documented? So this is the thing about Wezterm. So here I'm typing man wez t and I'm hitting tab and nothing is being completed. And that's because as far as I'm aware, I don't know, from what I can tell, there's no man page. So there's no on the system documentation for Wezterm that I can find. However, if you go to their website, they do have pretty good documentation. I wouldn't say it's quite at the level of KiTTY, but I mean it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But you know, if you're someone who's not comfortable coding, then you might not feel comfortable writing code to configure Wezterm. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, on their website, they have quite a bit of documentation. And I think that you can, like, see here, we see that they're configuring a color scheme. And yes, technically this is like Lua code, right? But I think that you don't have to be some kind of whiz-bang programmer to read this line, right? I mean, you'll probably be confused about these two lines. I know, I mean, I am. I don't know what these are really doing because I don't know Lua that well. But I put them in my config file and it's been working fine. I haven't really had to think about them. But yeah, these three lines are basically boilerplate that you have to have in your config. And then in between those three lines is where you put whatever code you have that'll configure the editor. Okay. How are we doing on time? Pretty good. Okay, let's go back to my slides. See what I have next. Ah, good. So I did a little bit of digging into the community for, well, I don't know, into the project status, I guess, for KiTTY and Wezterm. And if we take a look, I'm going to see if I can pull these up side by side. Let's see if I can pull these up side by side. Okay, I'm not sure how well everybody can see this, but on the left side, I have the Pulse page from KiTTY's GitHub. And on the right side, I have Wezterm's Pulse page from the GitHub. And what we'll notice here, and I'm not saying this is indicative of these two projects, but at least for the past 1 month, what we have on KiTTY is we have COVID, the main developer, doing a ton of work. Okay, he did somehow 67 commits in the last month. And then we have a couple people also contributing a commit or two. Like all these people seem to have done 1 or 2 commits. If we look over on the Wezterm side, over here on the right, we'll see here's.
That's only a week.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Let me make this one big too, because I think this is not going to display 100% correct. Oh, it did. Okay. So yeah, so 1 month. So here's Wes doing quite a lot of work, 23 commits. But we'll notice there's a lot more community contributions or contributions from people other than Wes here. And I don't know if this is fully indicative of this project, but you know, my hunch is being written in Rust, you know, Rust is very trendy, and there's probably a lot of people who are learning Rust and wanting to find a project to commit to. And so there's a lot more contributions from the community on Wezterm than there are on KiTTY. And doing a little bit of research on my own, and I'm not an expert, and I'm not saying I did like an autobiography on these people, but I think this is kind of probably what you can expect. On the KiTTY side, it's basically COVID Goyal, it's basically his show. He kind of runs the show. He's kind of like, I don't know if you want to call him like the Linus of KiTTY, you know, basically where he just does he seems to be the main developer by a long shot. And then on the Wezterm side, it seems more of a community project. To me, this is just the sense I get. Okay, I'm not an expert. This is just the sense I get, where Wezterm is more community and KiTTY is more one guy, you know, doing the development. So take that with a big grain of salt, though. Like I said, I didn't spend a ton of time doing this research. Okay. Also, another thing about COVID Goyal, who's the KiTTY developer, he seems brash. I'm going to call him brash because I've looked through some of the GitHub commits and things and the issue comments, and he seems blunt, brash. Some people might call him an a-hole. I don't know. So if you're one of these people, if you're someone who needs the maintainer to be nice and friendly and positive, and that's something very important to you, is that the maintainer is super cheerful, then KiTTY might not be the editor for you. So I was looking through Hacker News and I saw this thread, and somebody on Hacker News said, COVID really bugs me, and as a reason I turned away from KiTTY, I saw his character while looking up Tmux issues. He's brash like Linus, but at least while Linus is calling you an idiot, he'll tell you a better way to solve your problem. So I thought that was kind of funny. And I can see where this commenter is coming from, looking through some of COVID's remarks on the GitHub issues. That being said, this is not something that bothers me personally. Like there's a very low chance that I'm ever going to write code for KiTTY. And so the chance of me interacting with this guy one-on-one, very unlikely, right? But what I will say is back in 2021, so he might have changed his mind now, I don't know. But back in 2021, he said terminal multiplexers in general are an anti-pattern. So if you are an avid Tmux user, it might work fine on KiTTY. I don't know. I don't use Tmux. But if you're someone who uses Tmux nonstop and that's the most important thing to you, KiTTY might not be the most well supported with Tmux because the main developer thinks that Tmux, or he did back in 2021, he thought that Tmux is an anti-pattern. So just take that with a grain of salt. If Tmux is something super important to you, try KiTTY, but if it doesn't work, I wouldn't go creating issues about it because you might not get the best response. I don't know.
This is Stan. What is an anti-pattern?
He just an anti-pattern is something, I don't know, basically it's the opposite of a best practice. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay. How far down the slides am I? Okay, let's go ahead and I need a water break. So let's go ahead and do an intermission right now. Just give me a sec to get some water. Oh, actually, wait. I have a hot take that I'm going to drop, and then I'm gonna walk away to get some water. And hopefully I start an argument in the chat while I'm gone. Okay. So I have used Windows on the desktop for the past couple years. Before that, I was Linux on the desktop, but for the past couple years, I've used Windows on the desktop. And the reason why I've done that is because at work, I have to use Windows. And sometimes it's nice to just use Windows at home too, because then I have the same workflow when I'm developing at home and when I'm developing at work. Windows is very annoying. It's got ads. It's always nagging you. It reboots all the time randomly. So I don't like it, but I was really looking forward to Windows Recall. Do you guys know what Windows Recall is?
No.
Yes.
Okay, so Windows Recall, I'll briefly describe what I know about it. So when Microsoft was coming out with their Copilot Plus PCs, which they came out with a few months ago, they had this feature called Windows Recall. And basically what it was going to do was every few seconds, it was going to take a screenshot of what's displayed on your screen. And then they were going to basically get all the text out of those screenshots, store it in some kind of storage, and then they were going to run like AI vectorization on it and stuff like that. And then what the result would be was that there would be a local model. I mean, if you can trust Microsoft, it would be a local model running locally on your computer that you could ask it things like, hey, show me that motorcycle I was looking at last week, right? And you could ask a local AI to show you things like that. And since it was taking a screenshot of what's on your computer every like few seconds, it should be able to basically return that for you. Be like, oh, here's the motorcycle you were looking at last week, and provide you the link to the motorcycle you were looking at or whatever. And to me, that sounds like a super useful thing, right? I feel I feel like it's a really bad idea to be on by default because like people are still out there clicking on malware all the time, and you don't want the bad guys to be able to grab all that data so easily. So I think it should be off by default. But I have a pretty good track record of not getting hacked, not getting malware, not clicking on random things. I haven't had any malware on any of my systems since like the aughts. So I'm not that scared personally. Maybe I should be, but I'm not that scared of a hacker like breaking into my system and stealing that data of like everything that's been on my screen every few seconds. So I think for me, the benefit of having a local AI that I can ask things about what I've done on my computer sounds super helpful compared to the risk, right? For me personally. But they delayed the feature. There was so much backlash because people are so scared that they delayed the feature. And so I don't even have that to look forward to. And so now I'm switching to Linux because it's less annoying and I don't have Windows Recall to look forward to because who knows when they're going to actually bring it out. So that's my hot take is I was really looking forward to Windows Recall and I'm really upset at, well, not really upset, but I'm a little bit annoyed at the general tech people like y'all for giving Microsoft so much crap that they delayed it. So there's my hot take. Please discuss while I go grab some water.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
And your age,
The lobby.
Guillotine, guillotine, guillotine.
I got a cool new Docker file.
God.
Yeah, I built a system with 9 optical drives and figured out how to make the automatic gripping machine to work.
automatic gripping machine. What does that do?
It makes it so that when I put a DVD, CD, data CD into the drive, it identifies it and then starts up the appropriate ripping software, make MQV or I think.
Oh, I see.
So all I have to do is shuffle disks in and out.
Yeah. That Microsoft recall he was talking about.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how complicated that must be if they're going to take screenshots and use an AI to extract information from that? Can you imagine how freaking complicated that'll be? Worse than a German car.
Yeah, there was going to be a full-blown SQLite data file in there. It's like, huh. If I'm a hacker, I'm going after that SQLite file.
Yeah, really. No kidding. Unless you're stupid.
That was the initial problem, was that they were not encrypting any of that at rest.
Yep.
And supposedly they're going to have it fixed by November, blah blah blah. You know, it's and
I don't know. That just doesn't interest me that much. But I mean, then you got to encrypt all of that. And oh my God, you see the complexity, the way
Let alone the fact it's got to decrypt it to use it, which means that as long as the malware is running as you, it's got access to it anyways.
Yeah.
But at least they use SQLite and not Excel.
Well, also imagine if somebody breaks into your system and captures all that. They've got this super keylogger, and with the assistance of some artificial intelligence, they can impersonate you to the point of how are you ever going to establish your identity again? Period.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yep. That's
There's
the reason why it's being delayed.
My newest Microsoft system is Windows 7.
I
Well,
just
if they keep
installed,
people off of Windows and puts them on Linux, that's a good thing.
I just installed Windows 10 LTSC, which is good till 2032. And it's just Windows.
And they what?
It's just Windows 10. No Microsoft Store, no features, just Windows. So, when I want to play a game that's has to run on the Windows kernel because some god awful anti-cheat, I got a copy of Windows and it's not garbage. It's actually good. I would actually call it
That's got to be
on
an
par with Windows 7.
Yeah, my old Windows 7, it's been running upstairs, oh God, since at least 2013. And I keep it around to support a particular printer that I have that Linux never used to support, that Canon, but that's been years since I looked, so that may have changed.
Oh, well,
All right, that was a good discussion. Thanks all for giving me a little break there. Let's go ahead and
nice.
continue on unless anybody's got any last thoughts.
Off with his head.
Okay.
Everybody move down, move down.
All right, let's talk about some of these fancy SSH features that these new terminals have. And please, I am just barely scratching the bucket here with what these I'm just barely dipping my toe into what these things can actually do. I just want to show you the very basics of what's possible here with these. So let me go ahead. I'm going to start with KiTTY again, let me close that. That should not be open. 1 second, sorry. Just need to figure out how to maximize this with the Zoom thing in my way. Okay, go here. This is KiTTY, okay. And I'm going to show off some fancy SSH stuff. So if I do kitten, this is one of those kittens I was talking about earlier. They're like built-in programs that come with KiTTY that basically allow you to control KiTTY itself. And then I'm going to do Sean at odroid h3+. That's my little server thing running over here. And now let's go into, I don't know, do I have some, what do I have here? Let's go into doc config. That should exist, right? Yeah. Okay. So now I'm in the server. Okay. So I'm doing serious business here. Serious work business. And then I'm going to do my Alt Control Enter. And look at this. I have a new split that's in the same server. Okay. In the same folder, in the same server that I was just in. Okay. So cool. So cool. So if you're doing some like I don't know, journal CTL something, and you're watching all this text fly by, and then you're like, wait a second, I want to investigate something. You can like just leave this open, leave the top split open, open a new split with one key press. You have a new split on the same server. You know, whatever, you go cat whatever file, you jump back up, you page through up here a bit more, you jump back down, you ls whatever file. It's just being able to open a new split in the same exact folder on the remote server, super cool in my opinion. Really handy. Just that alone is great. Because so many times I'm like, I less one log file, and then I like close it, I less another one, then I close that one, I go back to the first one and try to find that time. You know, I'm trying to match up the timestamps and stuff like that. And like sometimes I get fancy and I do the thing where you can open more than one file and less at the same time, and I like flip back and forth. But sometimes I don't do that because I don't think I need to, you know. And just being able to like, okay, let me leave that less open and let me just open a new split, and it's going to be right there. So I'll just less that other file in the other split, and then bam, I have two lesses side by side and like, you know, just a few keystrokes, you know. And to me, this is like a really cool feature. This is a cool enough feature that it's worth aliasing SSH to be this. in my opinion, the kitten SSH. So in my opinion, this is a really cool feature. Like I said, these terminals can both do way more fancy SSH stuff than this, but I'm just showing you something that's like immediately useful. I think everybody can understand immediately why that's useful. So this is Wezterm. Okay, so I closed KiTTY and now I'm in Wezterm, and I'm going to show you how to do the same thing in Wezterm. So let me so for KiTTY it was kitten SSH, and for Wezterm it's just Wezterm SSH. And I'm gonna hit enter here, and for some reason it opens it in a new window. I don't know why that is, but it does. It opens it in a new window, and let me go to my .config directory, and then if I do the keyboard shortcut for Wezterm, which is Alt Control Shift quote, it opens it on the same server, but not in the same folder. So we're pretty it's close. It's still better than opening it up in my home directory. At least it's connected to the server. It's just not in the same folder. So Wezterm, not quite as good, but better than like GNOME terminal or whatever, in my opinion. So that is a very, very short look at fancy SSH. Any questions about that?
I don't use tmux, but can tmux do the same kind of thing?
So tmux, you have to install on your server, right? For it to do any good, you have to have tmux installed in whatever you're remoting into. And for KiTTY, you don't have, and for these, for doing what I don't have Wezterm nor KiTTY installed on my little server thing up there. So you don't have to install anything on the server to get that functionality.
You can run tmux from your workstation and have as many panels open as you want to on 14,000 different servers.
Yeah, it's got all that screen splitting and tabbing and jumping from one to the other. I did a presentation on that a couple of years ago, and if somebody's interested, I've got the presentation. Basically, I can send it to anybody who wants it.
Yeah, but does it open a new tab? And does it open it in the same server? Like if you open a new pane in tmux, does it go to the same server, same directory though? Because that's the killer feature to me.
It does, doesn't it, Lee?
No, because the window you're opening is on the machine you're running tmux on.
Oh, excuse me.
But
Now I'm going to have to get something out and go to my one machine that's always got tmux on it.
So does any of these have a multi-exec across the tabs? So you can type a command once and it'll type it in every tab?
Where was?
Yeah, KiTTY has that too, where you can like broadcast across multiple splits. I don't know about tabs, but splits. I'm not going to demo that though.
Oh, you don't want to shut down the entire infrastructure in one fell swoop?
Yeah, that's right. One typo and you get fired because you did the wrong thing and took down everything, and now poor Muffy and Buffy aren't going to have a father anymore. And
Yeah.
okay, let's keep on going here. So both of these terminals are somewhat cross-platform. So KiTTY works on Linux, Mac, and BSD, and Wezterm works on Linux, Mac, BSD, and Windows. So if you're somebody who has to use Windows and you want to use the same terminal on Windows and Linux, then Wezterm is going to be your way to go. If you want to run KiTTY on Windows, you can run GUI applications from WSL2, and it uses like Wayland and everything. It's pretty slick, but it's not fully integrated with like things like the taskbar and stuff like that. Okay, now let's get to the Wayland story. So KiTTY for me, so this is me personally on my system, which is NixOS, NVIDIA, and GNOME. When I launched a Wayland session, KiTTY worked just fine out of the box. No issues. Fast, great. On that same setup, when I launched Wezterm, it did not work. It would hang every few seconds, it would hang and kind of like try to do and GNOME would ask me to do a force quit. And if we look here at these links, so if you notice on, why is that being slow? Let me open both of these in case they're both slow. Can y'all hear me? Am I live?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, maybe I won't be able to show this. That's strange. Well, okay. Anyway, I was going to demonstrate it, but it's not that important really. But basically, if you look at the recent release notes from just the past few months with KiTTY, you'll see Wayland, where he's just constantly making Wayland improvements to KiTTY out of the box. And if you look at the recent release notes for Wezterm, what they're going to tell you is they are currently re-implementing Wayland, I guess from the ground up or something. So they say it's going to be more unstable than usual. So both of these terminals are putting in a lot of active work to support Wayland. It just seems like KiTTY is a little bit farther along than than Wezterm is, at least on my system. That's how it worked. That's how it was.
Hey, Sean, before you leave this point, I was going to ask up something a second ago and I didn't get a chance. Do either of these tools have any sort of like Git integration or any debugger integration?
Debugger.
In other words, like IDE.
Oh, well, I mean, they both run NeoVim.
Say again?
They both run NeoVim, which can have that.
Okay.
But that's all I know about. I mean, what terminal specific debugger features are you looking for?
Well, no, I'm just trying to figure out if this is, in other words, I use normal bash, Xterm, and tmux all the time. Every system I work on has tmux, and I've got my own config file set up. But every once in a while I get in a situation where I want to debug something, and I actually got involved in a Windows project last year, and I kind of like Video Studio a little bit. I hate to jump into something that's that complicated. I'm just wondering if there's a middle ground anywhere.
Yeah. And you can definitely do that with NeoVim, but good luck. Like you're gonna have to become an expert in NeoVim configuration to get that working. I mean,
Okay.
the easiest way to do that is just going to be VS Code. That's going to be the most straightforward out of the box. VS Code is going to be the most straightforward way to get something like that working. Which, has really nothing to do with the terminal.
I grabbed VS Codium. I've been playing with that a little bit. That's the open source version that runs on Linux.
Yep.
Sean, can you give a executive overview, 5 seconds, of what Wayland is for those that don't know?
So Wayland is a replacement for X. Okay, so it's my understanding, and I've never looked at the X code, but it's my understanding that the X code, like the code for X, like the X server and X11, is really old. I mean, that's just a fact. It's really old. My understanding is it's really hard to make any changes. And the fact is that a lot of these systems have been using X for so many decades that any change you make could have so many unintended consequences, right? For something that's been around that long. And so X is basically dead. I mean, X and X11, you could say they're dead. You could say they're feature complete. You could say, but the point is they're not getting any significant new work, it sounds like to me, just because the code is really difficult to work with and maintain. Wayland is a replacement for X11 and X server and all that. And it's been around for over a decade. I think 16 years or something is how long Wayland's been around. And really, Wayland is like a specification. And then there's different implementations of Wayland, like WL Roots and Mutter and some others. And they're basically implementations of the Wayland spec or the Wayland protocol. And I am very much speaking out of school here, so if anybody knows better, feel free to jump in. I think for people who don't use NVIDIA graphics cards, Wayland has been rock solid for several years now. As long as you don't need to do like remote desktop type stuff, which I think only became available in Wayland relatively recently. But for people on NVIDIA cards, Wayland still poses a pretty significant challenge, but I think that should be changing in the next couple months, because now that NVIDIA is making all the money, they decided they should probably support Linux a little bit better. And so they actually open sourced a part of their the part of their driver that like interacts with the kernel. I mean, of course, there's still proprietary blobs for their driver, but I think now you can like install like I don't know. I don't fully understand it, but basically the NVIDIA story on Wayland should be getting very much better when it in Ubuntu 24.10 and Fedora 41 or whatever the next version of Fedora is. They're both going to include the fixes that should make Wayland and NVIDIA work much better. So bottom line is, if you tried Wayland several years ago and it sucked, it might be time to update your opinion when Ubuntu 24.10 and the next version of Fedora comes out. How's
Thank
that,
you.
man?
That's great. Thank you. I learned some stuff I didn't know about.
What were you talking about? I missed that somehow.
We have a recording that's going to be posted tomorrow.
Yeah, but by tomorrow, I won't remember to ask the question.
Well, it'll be an entirely new session for you, won't it?
Pardon?
Everything will be entirely new for you. You can start asking questions from the beginning, and then if you have a real question, you could post it up on the Discuss mailing list.
What did you say? Your
Hey,
name is.
Hey,
You said,
the 30-second, 30,000-foot overview. Wayland is a halfway logically designed replacement for X, because X is so huge and it's like an amoeba in a sci-fi movie.
Spaghetti code.
Spaghetti code, yeah, good analogy. But Wayland is theoretically a clean sheet design that tries to architect a better window manager. But as Sean said, it's been around for 16 years, and I've tried it 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years, and there was just so much stuff that didn't work. I said, forget it. So it may or may not be ready for prime time yet. And one of the biggies has been hardware compatibility. NVIDIA has been a big issue for people that like NVIDIA hardware. Does that help?
yeah,
Okay, let's keep moving here.
I'm not going to worry about it for a while.
Yeah, wait until the next version of Ubuntu and the next version of Fedora come out, and I think that'll be a
Now,
lot
which
better.
version of Ubuntu should I be looking for?
The next version is going to be 24.10, which should come out next month. But that's just an interim release, so not long-term support.
I was going to say, when's the 24? What's going to be the long-term support version? 20? Good God.
2604, I guess. is the next
Well,
one.
2404 should be a long-term version.
Yeah, but it doesn't include the newest NVIDIA stuff to fix that. Well, I guess if you don't use an NVIDIA GPU, then do whatever you want. But there's some NVIDIA specific Wayland fixes that should be landing in 24.10 and the next version of Fedora.
Okay.
All right, let's go on. So both of these terminals are GPU accelerated, and I don't know how to really benchmark a terminal, and I didn't bother learning how to do that. So instead, I just did some really basic crap here. So on the left side, I have ran time ls-l capital R on my root slash. And so basically what this does is this lists every file on my root partition, which, you know, is a lot of files. And KiTTY was able to perform that, like listing all the files in about 13 seconds. And Wezterm did it in about 13 seconds as well. They were literally within like 100, 200 milliseconds of each other. So no noticeable performance difference with listing all of the files in my root file system. But then, being the idiot that I am, I'm like, well, let's crank it up and see what happens. So my next test was to display 10 million lines. So just crank it up by a couple orders of magnitude and see which terminal could display 10 million lines the fastest. And the winner by a long shot was KiTTY. So KiTTY was able to display 10 million lines of text in about 21 seconds. Wezterm took about 1 minute and 15 seconds to display
I
10
didn't see
million
that
lines.
1M out there. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So I don't know why Wezterm is so much slower at displaying 10 million lines of text, but it is like way slower, like 4 times slower or something like that at displaying 10 million lines of text. And I don't know why, because if you look at the sys and the user numbers there between the two terminals, it's exactly the same. And I think that those numbers probably represent like how much time it took to like generate the 10 million lines of random characters probably. And then for some reason Wezterm, and it was consistent every time. It would take like around 1 minute and 15 seconds to do it. And I don't understand why it was so much slower than KiTTY. But but also, does this matter, right? Like, when are you ever going to ask your terminal to display 10 million lines of text? I don't think that's realistically something you're going to do. What's that?
There was Tuesday, and there was Wednesday.
Yeah. But I will say, though, subjectively, so just completely my subjective opinion, I think KiTTY is faster and smoother. Like whenever I'm typing commands in KiTTY and whenever I'm seeing the output come in, it just feels right, subjectively, it feels more instantaneous than Wezterm. But my system's very old, right? I have a CPU from 2016, so it's old, 8 years old. And to me, KiTTY feels more performant. And I guess that is technically backed up here by the data. So, but that's just my feeling of it. Okay, let's keep going. And then after I ran those two benchmarking commands, I ran a PMAP on each terminal. And KiTTY was using about 430 megabytes of RAM, and Wezterm was using about 1 gigabyte of RAM. So if you're on a memory constrained system, definitely use KiTTY over Wezterm, because Wezterm uses about over twice as much RAM. Oh, here we go, the finale. Well, at least the best part. So the KiTTY graphics protocol. Okay. Yes, it has KiTTY in the name. That's because it was created by the same guy who creates KiTTY. But the KiTTY graphics protocol has been implemented by a few terminals. So KiTTY has implemented it, obviously. Wezterm has implemented it. Console has implemented it. And Ghosty, which is a very exclusive invite only terminal emulator that's got all the buzz right now, if that can even be a thing. But yeah, several terminals have implemented the KiTTY graphics protocol, and I'm really excited to show this off. So I'm going to show it off first in KiTTY. So for all of you that think that a terminal is a text only experience, this is going to prove you wrong, okay? Whether you like it or not. So, all right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use another one of these kittens. So what this says is kitten and then iCat, which stands for image cat, I think. And then here I'm setting the background. I don't know if y'all can see that. I'm setting the background to white because the image that I'm displaying has a transparent background. It's a PNG. And then I'm just giving it the name of a file, which is the distro flavor of the month.png. And so when I run this command, we're going to see the distro flavor of the month displayed on a white background. But wait, there's more. Okay.
What about transparent?
Yeah.
Well, this PNG is transparent. And so if I didn't put the background white, you wouldn't see the NixOS because it'd be black on black.
Okay.
Okay. But wait, there's more. It can display GIFs as well. So here is a matrix GIF running inside my terminal.
Yeah, but your terminal is running in an X or Wayland window, though. Right?
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, what'd you say you use? Like a Xterm or something? It can't do this. It can't display images.
That's what I'm. There is an Xterm version. Well,
It can open images, like you can open an external program that'll view images.
Yeah.
But you can't display images in that old thing.
Well, 85% of the TMUX stuff I do is I SSH to a remote machine that can be anywhere in the country, or basically, and do maintenance work on it. And I've got 4 or 5 panels open in TMUX. I've got my personal ID if I'm doing Docker work. Got a couple root panels for doing package updates and stuff like that. But there is no link between those two systems that would handle X. So I guess the point I was making is this works if you're running that terminal on a local machine, but it can't work if it's running on a remote machine, right?
Maybe. But the whole point here is like, so for decades, the terminal has been text only. And if you run into something fancy, like an image file, you're just up a creek. You have to use some external application. Well, not anymore. Okay, now terminals can be graphical. And yes, okay, maybe it doesn't work that well remotely if you have low bandwidth or whatever.
This is Stan. This is
Terminal
Stan.
too, okay? Is everybody seeing this? Who is seeing this? Okay.
We all see it.
Zoom in the terminal, okay? And I will prove it to you. Okay. I am gonna run top on this side and Doom on this side, okay? And I'm gonna play through the first level. Y'all are gonna watch me play through the first level of Doom in my terminal while top is running in a different split, okay? Y'all are gonna watch me and I'm gonna do really good. I am elite gamer, okay? This is gonna happen. I used to love this game back in whatever it was, the 90s.
Yeah.
Tell me that's not cool. Come on, I'm running Doom inside of a terminal emulator. Okay, somebody ported Doom to a terminal emulator, okay? I have top running right next to Doom. I can monitor my system while beating the first level of Doom. Okay, come on. And how do you close terminal applications when you're done? You hit Control-C. Control-C, close that thing. Woo, okay, cool. All right. Whole talk is worth it just because of that. All right.
Cool.
In the past, I've seen Ranger do the same kind of thing, and that there was a thing, I believe the name was ZXG or some for graphical thing within a terminal, but not as sophisticated as this KiTTY thing is. Not as sophisticated.
You might have found something that Emacs cannot do.
I love it.
Okay.
Oh,
And like I said, Wezterm has also implemented the KiTTY graphics protocol. So right now I'm in Wezterm. All right, Wezterm. And Wezterm can do similar things, slightly different. Oh, whoops. I did not mean to do that. I don't know what I guess I copied my entire demo dot. Hold on, let me. Sorry, I'm choosing, I guess, at 2 hours into the presentation to start making typos. I don't. Let me try that again. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot. So Wezterm's version is called Wezterm. So in KiTTY you run kitten iCat, and Wezterm you run Wezterm imgcat. And for some reason it can't display that one. I don't understand it. I didn't look into it at all. But Wezterm can't display that one, but KiTTY can. But Wezterm can display this one, the matrix GIF. So I don't know what's going on there, but it does implement the KiTTY graphic protocol, so it can do this stuff as well. So let's play Doom again. There we go. So it can display Doom, and it'll show us Doom. You know, this is like the little I don't know, pre-running animation thing. But if I try to play, it usually doesn't work. And I don't know. Yeah, see, I just hit up one time and now it's like stuck, where like I'm just running into a wall. So I don't really, and see now I can't. I'm pushing all these buttons and nothing's happening. So I don't really know why it doesn't work. Could be something I'm doing wrong, or I don't know. But
They use a standard solitaire test. Okay.
solitaire test.
Are you running Wayland, Sean, or X?
X.
Okay.
Wezterm didn't work for me on Wayland. I showed that slide earlier. They have a thing in the doc saying we're overhauling Wayland support, so it might not work.
yeah.
So yeah, definitely running X right now because I figured apples to apples, I'll run X for Wezterms for both, you know.
Yeah, if they want to replace X with Wayland, I mean, I'm not opposed. X is hard on the bandwidth. I've noticed that. But X has been around so long, it's like Windows, you know, you have no idea what's really in there,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, it sounds like nobody really knows.
Well, that could very well be. I once pulled up a copy of, you remember Xterm, the terminal emulator that I guess it came with X. I don't know.
I still use Xterm.
So you mean the one Lee still uses? And
Well,
Stan?
I got the source code for it. I wanted to do something, and I opened the head file, and I start looking at the comments right smack at the top, and it says, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Don't even waste your time. It works. Leave it alone, or go write something else." You know, basically.
Funny.
But yeah, I looked at that for a while and went, "Oh, geez, kill the editor." You know.
Just as a aside to some of the discussion, I just did a quick scan on remote Wayland. It looks like it uses RDP.
I think I've heard that as well, yeah.
Yeah, for remote control. So that means simple stuff like our desktop, you know, should be able to connect. But that's a pain in the butt on Linux. I forget what I did a couple of years ago. I had a project to connect to a Linux server on Azure, and the GUI was just a royal pain in the butt. It was really hard to do. Okay, I'm sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
And now you can play Doom even if you don't have without the GUI. So who needs GUIs anymore? Come on, we can play Doom in the terminal. We don't need GUIs anymore. All right. All right. Okay, so I want to show off, I'm almost done. I know I'm going too long, like always, but I want to show off a couple unique features. So these are features, I have no doubt that you can, for each of these features that I'm about to show off, I have no doubt that you can configure the other one to do the same thing if you like put enough work into your configuration. But there's some unique features that each one of these kind of has better support for out of the box that I want to show. And with KiTTY, it has this really cool ability of hyperlinking that I really want to show off. And then with Wezterm, it has this really cool ability to select text with the keyboard. And so I just want to show off a couple of these unique features, and then we'll get to my my conclusion slide, and then we are all done. So here is KiTTY. So this is KiTTY, okay? All right. And so if we look at, is this it? Yes. If we look at my aliases, I have aliased ls to have this thing called hyperlink equals auto. And this is just in standard ls. There's nothing funky about this ls. It's just completely standard. And then if I do, so now if I do like an ls-al, when I hover my mouse over any of these, you see that it gets this little underline. Hopefully that's coming through, but it gets a little underline under it. And my cursor changes to a little hand, so you know you're on a link. And I've got it configured where if I click on a folder, like documents, it's going to CD into documents, and then it'll do an ls-al. Okay. So when I click on a folder, that's what it does. It CDs, it does an ls. So I could literally click my way through the file system using the mouse. But you know, people don't like using the mouse. So if I push Control-Shift-P, Y, now what it's done is it has put a, I guess a letter or a number next to every hyperlink here. And so if I want to go into like this images directory, I hit 5. Oh, no, that didn't work. Oh, yeah, that doesn't work on the folders. But like here, let me do it on this. If I'm gonna hit 1. So basically, I might have did that too fast, but basically you hit Control-Shift-P-Y and it puts that little number, and then you push the number, and that simulates clicking on the thing. So every time you see me click on something, you could do that Control-Shift-P-Y maneuver instead, okay? And so, you know, now I want to go back up to where I was, so I can click on the 2 dots, and that should take me up a directory, up a directory, up a directory. Now I'm back where I started. And then if I click on, or let me go into my .config, and I'll do an ls here. Wonder why that didn't show. Maybe I need to add an A. But anyway, I'll click on this monitors XML, and that's going to open in NeoVim. So clicking on a text file opens it in my editor. And I have something messed up right now, because if I click on, for example, if I click on this mimapps.list, it's going to open it in VS Code, which is not what I want. I'd rather just open it in NeoVim. And this isn't something to do with the MIME types. I know that I was messing with this morning. It's something to do with the MIME types, where this is MIME type application XML. This is MIME type text plain, and something about that is messing this stuff up. So, but I'll get that fixed. But still, you can click on these and open them up in your editor. But that's not all. Okay, let me show you something else that's even cooler. Okay, I hope you're ready. Let me go into my KiTTY directory, and let me paste this command, I think. Okay, so what I did, let me show the command. So I ran kitten, and then I ran hyperlinked -grep, and I searched for the word layout, case insensitive, and the KiTTY config file has a ton of the word layout all over it, right? And so if I click on one of these lines, like this one says the current layout name. It's line 1080. If I click on that, it opens in NeoVim and it takes me exactly to the line that I clicked on. And I think this is so cool, being able to grep a file and then click on it or use that keyboard shortcut and bam, I'm taking exactly to that line in the file that I was grepping. And I think that is so cool. So I think KiTTY has a really awesome system for like this hyperlinks and stuff. And if we just take a quick look at this openactions.conf, and this is in the KiTTY config directory, this is how you configure these kind of open actions. And so this is the one right here that does the jumping straight to the line. And the way that this works is anytime it sees the start of a line with like a letter, I guess it adds a hyperlink to it, and then it passes it in. You see with Vim and NeoVim, if you put this plus and then the line number right here, it opens it directly to that line number. And so that's how that's working. And I think it's super cool. I think that's really neat, being able to do that. And I don't think you can do that as easily with Wezterm. You might be able to do it, but I don't think you can do it that easily. So, okay, so that's KiTTY's cool, unique feature. Let's look at Wezterm's cool, unique feature as well. So I am in Wezterm now. And if I do something like this, so let's say I'm, okay, so I ran this command and I want to select this text here. I can push Control-Shift-X. And what this does is this puts me in copy mode. And you can see here, I'm using the Vim key bindings to move my cursor up and down. And I can, like, for example, I can do like Y, capital Y, to copy the line and then paste it, and then paste it, and then paste it. Hold on, Control-Shift-X, copy the line, and then paste it. There we go. And then I can do like less or whatever. And then I could less that file or whatever I need to do. But the point is, it makes it really easy to select text from previous commands that you've ran. And it uses the Vim key bindings, which if you're familiar with Vim, then that'll be super easy for you to do. And KiTTY can't do this as well as Wezterm out of the box. Of course, you can configure it, but out of the box, it does not do this as well as Wezterm does. So this is kind of the unique feature Wezterm has that KiTTY doesn't.
Attorney for a patent for the airplane.
What
We
was
have
that?
a lot of great history in this town, and I've been a lifelong citizen here for 59 years, and I have my trucks loaded. The last of my things.
What's that?
outside.
Got their mic open.
Killed.
Muted me. What the heck? Okay. Here's I think my final slide here, which is good. So ready to be done. So these are my subjective thoughts after playing with both of these terminals for a while. To me, KiTTY is smoother. It has a higher, I think it has a higher FPS. So I've been a gamer since I was like a small child. And I'm one of these people that can notice when like the frames per second drops below 30 FPS on a video game. And I think I can tell that KiTTY has a higher frame rate when I'm using it. Also, subjectively, my opinion, KiTTY has better font rendering and a better default color scheme. Also, KiTTY worked on Wayland for me out of the box without doing anything. So those are the pros for me of KiTTY, the subjective pros of KiTTY, you know, it has more features too. I think that's just objective. I don't think there's any doubt there. The cons for KiTTY, which these don't bother me at all. But you know, I talked about the developer being kind of brash or blunt or straightforward or whatever. That seems to be true. And also he seems, or at least he was back in the day, kind of hostile to multiplexers like TMUX, which I don't care. I don't use TMUX. So the cons for KiTTY don't really bother me. Moving over to the Wezterm side, you know, it runs on Windows, you know, so that is, if you have to use Windows, then that's your only option. So go with Wezterm. Also, Wezterm is configured with Lua. You know, I talked about how it is basically the Emacs of terminals because your configuration is done in a full-blown programming language. So if you like that, then that's going to be cool. You know, me personally, not sure I love that. Seems like a lot of work to me. Also, the developer, from what I can sense, like being around and looking on Hacker News and stuff, the developer of Wezterm is generally well liked, as opposed to the developer of KiTTY, who is like brash and turns some people off. So if you're someone who cares a lot about having a maintainer who's like polite and nice all the time, then Wezterm might be the better one for you to go to. And then the cons under Wezterm are basically all the pros for KiTTY. I felt like it didn't work. It didn't work on Wayland on my system. The performance was worse. The slightly worse font rendering, slightly worse default color scheme. But these are mostly my subjective opinions, and everybody's going to have their own opinion about a lot of this stuff. But for me, I'm going to be using, like, now that this presentation's done, I'm going to go uninstall Wezterm and configure the keyboard shortcuts that I like in KiTTY tomorrow, because I've been trying to use the defaults for this presentation. And now that it's done, I'm going to go put the keyboard shortcuts that I like in KiTTY and start using that as my daily driver. So that's the one. If I had to pick one, who won the showdown? Certainly for me, it's KiTTY. Okay, that's my last slide. Does anybody have any questions?
Cool.
I certainly do.
Sure.
Okay. So about a year ago, I tried both of these on Mac OS, and I was very disappointed because at that time the accessibility story was virtually non-existent. Neither one worked with VoiceOver. And I don't know if it on Linux, if it works with Orca. It might. I mean, Orca is orchestrated using Python, and KiTTY's got some Python in it, I guess. So maybe there's some interaction there that's possible. But it doesn't work on Mac OS for VoiceOver. At least it didn't a year or so ago.
That is a bummer.
And I think the reason why is because of the GPU stuff, right? So you're literally the text from your shell, right, is being driven directly to the GPU and then using that to render fonts. And then, you know, making the screen, you know, do the screen geometry stuff. And I think in order to be a accessible thing for a terminal client, you have to have I think you literally have to interact with the operating system, or at least the screen reader component of the operating system. You have to interact with it before you send the text over there. So I worked with, I don't know if you've heard this other terminal called Warp, which is another one that's written in Rust. Warp is a little bit more, they've got a whole different philosophy when it comes to what constitutes a terminal. But anyway, I worked with them. I was actually on the team that was doing accessibility testing for Warp, and they really had to. It was written in Rust, and they really had to like, you know, do a lot of extra work to get it to work on Mac OS. So I don't know. And of course, Warp is a Mac at the time was a Mac OS terminal emulator. So anyway, so I hope it changes. And I was thinking, well, maybe KiTTY, but if you can't go talk to them, if you can't go say, hey, where's your accessibility? Maybe Wezterm is easier to do that. I don't know. We'll have to try.
Yeah, that's a good call out. And yeah, you're probably right. It probably is like the GPU stuff, right? It's probably like, I mean, really the terminals are basically like video games, right? Where like all the internal stuff is basically on the GPU. So yeah, I can imagine where that would be challenging to have. And I thought about, actually Lee brought that up before I even gave the talk. It's like, okay, so you're doing a modern terminal talk and you're not going to include Warp, but Warp is a closed source. And so for that reason, it doesn't super interest me that much.
Yeah, they're gonna make it open source eventually, but I guess whatever they're, like a lot of people, proofs in the pudding.
Mm-hmm. It's like Carrie asked the question in chat, can you set it up with multiple sessions, then save where you are and come back to that after a reboot? So I don't know if you can save the sessions with KiTTY, but I know both of the terminals support startup sessions. So if you have like, if you when you start your terminal, you want to see 4 tabs and you want them to be in these specific directories and you want these certain applications like top or whatever to be running in certain tabs, you can set it up to where you basically just start the app and it automatically launches all that stuff. I don't know if you can like set it all up and then save it. I have not seen that functionality, but it could exist and I just don't know about it, especially with Wezterm. I can especially imagine that happening with Wezterm. I'm sure somebody's probably wrote the Lua code, in their config to make something like that happen. Possibly. So
So is there, I don't know, I'm trying to formulate this question in an intelligent way, which of course for me is impossible. But are any of the terminal emulators, do you need a matching piece of software on the target side? In other words, I want a terminal into that particular server over there. Can we always just use the default ports, go in, or do any of them require software to run on the server?
yeah, they definitely don't require it. Like I don't nothing that I showed tonight requires having anything installed on the server, but they do both have capabilities where if you do install it on the server, they can do extra whiz bang things. But I didn't go into those. I mean, I've seen them in the documentation, so I know they exist. But I don't have any details about what extra whiz bang stuff you get by installing it on the server.
Okay. We were just talking about that earlier today in preparation for tonight's talk, and I was like, I've never heard of it, such a thing, but yeah, I figured I'd ask. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Wezterm specifically has like a mux or like a multiplexer built in. So if you install that on the server, I think it can do a lot of similar things to actual tmux, I think, is my understanding. So you have to install it on all the servers that you want that functionality on. All right, well, I think that about wraps it. So Gary, back to you or whatever we're doing next.
Hey,
Just
Sean,
Cool. Thanks,
big
Sean.
thank you. Just when you thought, gee, what could possibly be new in the world of terminals? Wow. So,
I have one more question.
okay, yeah.
All right. I don't know if this was in the slides because I couldn't see them, but was there like, you know, like links to GitHub for these guys or something? Could you post that somewhere?
Yeah, there are I did put the links to their personal GitHubs, their individual ones. Let me post that in the chat for you.
Thank you.
But it's not, so Gary, you're telling me when you came, you came into tonight's talk, you weren't expecting to see me playing Doom in the terminal. Is that what you're saying?
No.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it ain't like the old days of the terminal. Oh gosh. Let's see. Well, people think of any other questions on topic. And there's Robert. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how you been?
Hey, good, good. I got a question for Lee or anybody else who wants to jump in with knowledge of the project. There's our Bach upgrade that we've been talking about for months, and we have enough volunteers to
You're trying to
work
put
on
me
it.
on the spot. I bought you dinner.
No, 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 no. I'm just saying, are there any great opportunities for yet more volunteers to grab a part of this project and jump in and learn about how to do a great upgrade on this software?
Well, we got some pretty thorny problems been floating around sysadmin for a while. If anybody would like to take a look at them, just scan the sysadmin's archives for the last couple months. We've had issues with the clone running properly, being it was trying to share. We got that fixed. There's all kind. It's almost to the point that it'd be nice if we had somebody with a fresh set of eyes that would just jump in, start parsing all the discussions. And I think Mike's got it started, but we kind of need a guide to the problems and potential solutions, and then what has been done and what needs to be done.
So a lot of times just getting a new set of eyes to look at the problem is a great way to find where a snag has been. So, by the way, I should have mentioned this at the beginning introduction. So for those of you who are not regulars to this meeting or to our group, the St. Louis Lug is part of STLLUG, St. Louis Linux User Group. So we run about 5 meetings a month, and to be a member of this group, it's real easy. If you show up for any 2 of our meetings in a calendar year, you're a voting member. There are no dues, so we're happy to have you, and we always appreciate anybody's thoughts and contributions, which is what we were just saying. And even doing this upgrade of one of our servers, yeah, just having somebody else take a look sometimes is a big help. So we do run a couple of servers. Thankfully, Lee's company, Omnitech, has been contributing some virtual machines and keeping us going. And so we really appreciate that. And So we have a team right now. We've been working on doing the operating system upgrade on that. On another point, Sean, if I can twist your brain off tonight's topic and onto a different topic, the website. You or Grant, either of you have anything to say about the status of the website project?
Nothing really changed this month. I mean, it's still humming along. I've been updating it every time there's a meeting, so it's fully up to date and all that. And but not, you know, the last thing that I proposed, I think, was like a short-term solution where we redirect some traffic from using Apache redirect to the new site running on Netlify. And we could do it in such a way where traffic to the root directory would go to the new site, but traffic to sub pages would still work. So for example, like the presentation archive is on the old site still. I'm not going to port that to the new site for a lot of that stuff. And so the new site just links to the old site. And so what I proposed, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, was a short-term solution where we could just, you know, basically do a redirect from the old site to the new site, but still leave the links like that I just described, like with the presentation archive working. People weren't too fond of that idea, but I don't know, it might be worth revisiting now that we've had 3 or 4 months of no action on the long-term solution. But you know, I don't know, I'm just updating the site when I update the meetup, and it's just coming along.
Last meeting, I believe you said something about needing somebody to do a shell script of some kind. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, well, to me, that's just like a nice to have, but basically what that would do, so the website is configured to reach out to Bach, which is our server, and try to pull a JSON file. And the JSON file describes for each meeting what the materials are. So like the video file, the audio file, the slides, you know, those kind of files that are stored on Bach. If somebody would write a script to create the JSON file for each meeting that lists the files and puts it in the right JSON format, then the new site would display all those files on each meeting's page. But to me, that's just a nice to have, because, you know, all that stuff is listed on the presentation archive, which is linked to from the new site. So even if we don't get that working, you can still get to the presentation archive with like 2 clicks.
Send me an email, Sean, and I'll see if I can hack something together with Python.
Okay, can you DM me your email address on Zoom here? Or put it in the chat in some way? Because I'm not on a lot of the email lists, so I don't have yours, I don't think.
Okay. We can get that done. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Other points, issues, topics, things that people have found interesting and nobody has fixed anything this week?
Oh, I fixed a lot of things. I just figured you were all tired of listening to me. I do have a question about Proxmox.
Yeah.
Anybody fought with that before?
Question about what?
Proxmox.
Oh, Proxmox.
I got a Diet Pie image that once in a great while will just freeze and then unfreeze. It's got a lot of memory and it's got 2 cores, 2 threads assigned to it. I'm new to Proxmox. I was just wondering if there was something I need to worry about when allocating resources. Our server's got like 56 threads assigned to it or available through the processor. So
That doesn't seem unwieldy.
I was going to try moving it to the other server I have in my cluster, but I figured I'd ask you guys first.
Yeah, no idea here.
But doesn't Proxmox just use KVM under the covers? I'm pretty sure it does.
I think so.
Yeah, so maybe that would be a way to troubleshoot, is to try to just, can you run it on regular KVM? And then maybe that would be closer to the metal, so to speak, and you'd get better error messages that would help you troubleshoot, I'm wondering. And then once you got it working where it'll run on KVM, then port it
Oh,
over. to try
that's
to-
the dumb thing. It works. It's just I'll be plugging along using what's installed on it, and it comes along, and then it'll just freeze.
How many?
And by the time I get to the console, it's unfroze. I'm like, what gives?
Memory you've got?
System memory, I like 128 gig. And I've assigned 20 to this.
I don't think that's enough. I think you might need to double that.
What kind of load are you running on there?
Right now I'm trying to run a satisfactory game server.
Okay. So, but what I'm saying is there's no GUI involved.
There's a web page for the
Yeah. Oh, that's not any kind of any window manager.
no.
Well, I mean, I've got a bunch of pies in the back room with 4 CPUs and a gig of memory apiece, and they loaf along at 100 processors.
Right. And I just like I was wondering if there was something I'm doing wrong with the scheduler or whatever you want to call it that breaks up the CPUs into the virtual machines. Since I have a Kubernetes cluster built up onto it, and the Windows virtual machine running also on that host name.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, it's an old Dell 730 that I absconded with when the company decided to retire the data center. Shoved a graphics card in there, and I have machinations to break it up and let my nieces and nephews use it to play video games.
Yeah.
Off their Raspberry Pi 4 so that I don't have to worry about them dumping a soda or something into a GPU. That or, rage quitting and throwing it out the window.
Harry had a question about altering a live distro and then building a new distro from it. And wasn't there some setup with OpenSUSE where you could do that?
Yeah, they're OBS, open build servers. You can use them to build any sort of ISO that you want.
seemed to me also that you could, years ago, Robert Cytek did a demo where you could mount an ISO loopback, go in and modify it, and then save it as a new ISO, and then burn it to a DVD.
Yeah, if it's an image, I think I've seen that done.
Yeah.
So you can't do it if you'd have to pull it off the DVD, modify it, and then burn it to a new one.
Uh-huh. But it seemed, I believe, like you said, that the OpenSUSE thing way more structured, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of things SUSE does that I don't even play with that are just, really fascinating to me.
Have you heard any more about OpenSUSE changing their name at request of SUSE?
They're not changing any names. You've still got Tumbleweed and Leap, but there's also now a Slow Roll and Micro, which is the immutable root file system. It's not the mainstream. It's a specialized version for things like Kubernetes clusters and stuff like that.
Right.
Docker images.
I'd heard somewhere that the OpenSUSE people had asked, or the SUSE people had asked OpenSUSE to change their name.
Hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah, I saw that too. Isn't that bizarre?
Yes.
I just don't understand that at all. I don't get it.
Maybe it's some Red Hat plants.
Could be. A lively group, a lot of dead air.
Yeah.
Well, I watched that talk. So they had a long, it was pretty much a waste of my time, but they had like a 30 or 45-minute talk at one of the last SUSE conferences about this naming thing, about how OpenSUSE, or about how SUSE Enterprise, the company has asked OpenSUSE to change their name. Ostensibly, it's because SUSE is getting support requests for OpenSUSE and stuff like this. I don't know. Seems weird. And the answer apparently was to just not have any sort of cohesive naming. Like, for example, I think one of their new things is called like Aeon or Aeron, or I don't know. And then they have another weird name for another one of their things. And I guess the answer is to just drop the OpenSUSE name and just start using these weird names that aren't really connected to each other in any way. It seems
Big lizard.
If that ever hits mainstream, it's gonna die, I predict. Because SUSE, OpenSUSE has been around for 30 years. And to try to throw a grenade in it now would just confuse people more. And I'm sorry, but if people are too stupid to know the difference between OpenSUSE and SUSE, then they deserve to get their hands slapped. And the SUSE project should not do anything to mitigate that. What's the old saying? You can't fix stupid.
I agree, Lee. It's like you're going to have 73 genders, and I'm supposed to. I could care less. And yeah, I mean, like you say, SUSE I don't use it very much, but SUSE has been around for a long time. And it's pretty big worldwide as far as I understand. And so why do you want, who exactly requested them to change their name?
Well, corporate hired somebody's nephew is what happened.
Wait a minute, say that again?
The corporate people hired somebody's nephew that doesn't know how to spell SUSE or OpenSUSE.
That could be. I mean, you could Google it. I'm sure that would show up, wouldn't it, Lee?
Well, it looked like it was from July. a bunch of people have been jumping on the bandwagon.
How do you spell SUSE, Lee? I can't remember.
SUS.
What's the last one?
E.
Okay.
Well, what doesn't make any sense to me is like, I thought the whole point was like, to have like, people, I thought the whole point was like people at home will use OpenSUSE and then they'll somehow take that to work, right? Like, isn't that the whole thing? Like, oh, we give them, we put the free tier for the hobbyists. So that way they'll get used to the thing and they'll take it to work. But they're like doing the opposite. They're like, no, you go away with your free thing and go over here and call yourself something different. And they're like, I just don't get it. I think it's bizarre.
It's an IBM thing.
The guy that just suggested it, has he got an MBA?
Well, this is the thing too. Who owns SUSE now? Like, hasn't SUSE, like the company, like changed ownership like 4 or 5 times in the last 4 or 5 years?
No, it's been long before that. It was originally Novell bought them, and then Novell got bought out, and then it was spun off as its own company. It's a public company.
Yeah, but there's been a lot since then. I know that's not it. They were bought by a holding company for a while, and then they sold them. There's been a lot of acquisition stuff in SUSE's recent history.
I'm sorry I asked the question. Well, it's 8:45. I suggest we ought to just go ahead and end the meeting.
I suppose so, unless somebody has some question or topic they'd like us to jump into here, but I think we probably covered a goodly bit tonight. Really appreciate Sean, all the work he did putting together the presentation. As I say, it's amazing to think that, wow, hey, there's new stuff in terminal emulators that I should be picking up on. Geez. So
I found it way more interesting than I thought it would be. Thank
Yeah.
you, Sean.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm trying to do more like this. I think as I switch from Windows to Linux, there's a lot of decisions that I'm going to have to make like this. Like, do I want to use this thing or this thing? And so if I find any more interesting choices with showdowns, I'll do some more talks maybe.
Great.
Well, one thing to consider if you're getting into this, just going with the traditional terminal emulators and bash, shell. If you ask a question on the web, you'll just be inundated with answers. Most of them pretty good quality. And I've come to respect that a lot. I don't want to use something where I type a question into Google or DuckDuck or something, and I get one response. Oh, geez, that's horrible. That's one of the things I like about Bash. There's just so many people working with it out there. It's hard to ask a question that somebody hasn't asked 10 times already.
Well, not only that, but Bash hasn't changed significantly in decades, right? So if you find an answer from 20 years ago, it's probably still perfectly valid, right? And
You're
you
exactly
say
right.
that about very much technology. I think Bash and the Linux CLI is basically the only thing where answers are good, have that long of a shelf life.
Yeah. I've got a book that I got back in the late 80s when I was working for a consulting company, and I was stationed at McDonnell Douglas in Mac Auto, and one of the guys there said, "You need to learn this stuff." And he said, "Here, get yourself this book." And I got it on the shelf here. I can't remember the title of it. but you know, part of the book was a bash, you know, like a you know, you just alphabetically the commands were in there, and you look at it, it says, oh, this ls does this, you know. And then it had the other section of the book was how you use it. And I've given that book to several people recently. It's still all valid. And that was from, I got that book in 1980, probably 88 or 89. And, you know, that still all works, which is something that I like, you know.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking about doing next. Like, so now that I know which terminal I'm going to use, now I need to know which shell I'm going to use, right? Bash versus fish versus ZSH.
Well, the other thing is I would recommend using bash because the Lee always used to give me a hard time about Emacs, the same exact argument. You go anywhere on a Linux system and bash will be there and it'll work the same. Oh, I'm sure there are different stories, different versions that have some do this better, some do that better. You know, it's like a distro, but the vast majority of this stuff is exactly the same. So you don't have to go learning it 3 to 4 different times to try to keep it straight. Excuse me. To me, that's important.
Yeah,
I hate it
it's ubiquitous, right?
for the sake of changing it.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, which distro are you using? Which
Me?
distro?
You didn't see
Sean.
my flavor of the month image?
What's that?
You didn't see my distro flavor of the month image earlier?
Oh, it's yeah, but I forgot.
NixOS.
Nix, okay. That's what I thought.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
use
so
it.
you've tried other ones and you've settled on that, or you just always wanted to use that, or
I've had my eye on NixOS for like 2 years now, and I finally just decided to take the plunge and try it. Before that, I was using Ubuntu, but it was on a dual boot.
I think we had one presentation on Nix, right?
It was, yeah, back in like 2019 or something, I think, or it's been a few years at least.
Hey, I've got a question, totally different subject. Sometime within the last couple of years, somebody did a presentation on a small handheld gizmo that could emulate, you know, TV remotes, garage door remotes, damn near
Flipper
anything.
Zero,
I'm sorry?
the Flipper Zero, I have one.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was it.
Flipper Zero.
Oh, for those who want that gain, Steam's got the Steam Deck original 64 and 512 gig models marked down this week and
You're
next.
breaking up, Tyler. At least to me anyway.
The Steam Deck, that Linux gaming PC I was talking about a year ago,
Okay.
the original 64 gigabyte and the 250 or 512 gigabyte models are on sale this week. If you do gaming.
Where do you get Flipper Zero?
Flipper Zero, I think you just buy it from.
You can buy them on Amazon if you want to buy them.
Well, what do you know?
I have a website called flipperzero.1. It's $169.
Dev board, $46. Raspberry Pi Zero for Flipper Zero, 35, $30.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on Amazon. Most expensive thing I've seen is $45.
Silicone case for Flipper Zero for $12. You know, that hobbyist stuff is pretty big.
Yeah, they got. One of the things I want to do is I want to emulate. Just the immediate project is emulate a garage door remote. I've managed to lose the original ones, and I've got some that I got from Amazon, and they're okay, but I haven't been able to activate all the features.
Like what? Don't you just open and close the door?
Yeah, the Amazon opens and closes the door, but I'd also like to be able to turn on the light in the garage or turn it off as a separate function. The original remotes that came with it did that. Boy, there is a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
Does it have contact leads for a button on the wall?
Yeah, it does. It's got a wall gizzy. Maybe I should just take that off the wall and disassemble it and see what's there's. As far as I know, there's no Wi-Fi in that box. or
No,
Bluetooth or
well,
anything.
my thought is if you get a relay board using the Raspberry 2040, you can use ESP Home to control those relays, and now you have control over it on your Wi-Fi. Usually I tell it, then that matches up with things like Home Assistant. But
Oh.
ESP Home is kind of interesting. I'm actually working on a board right now to watch water pressure before and after a filter.
Yeah.
I want to see. I don't know. Let's let him go. I want to see him use a Flipper Zero as a garage door opener because it's basically like using a chainsaw to open a cardboard box. Okay, and I got to see this. So don't give him any alternatives. Let's see this happen.
Oh, that's you're saying that we need to have the fun of him banging his head against that. Okay.
Using this little device.
Zero is a garage door remote.
Yeah, this device that can simulate, you can steal credit cards, can, hack Wi-Fi devices, can, all those things, and he's going to use it as a garage door opener. That's hilarious. It's like having like oh yeah, it's like opening a cardboard box with a chainsaw. It'd be great.
Video game module.
Yeah, there's a forum out there, forum.flipper.net. I think they could use some more server power.
Well, they run on a Pi Zero. You
Do
don't
they?
need server power. It's all just I/O.
No, I mean the website, not the actual machine device itself. Who's ever hosting their website for them? Oh well, it doesn't matter.
Sign off. Good night, all.
All right,
Take
guys.
care.
All righty.
Gary, you ready for
I
a booking?
think we're going to bookend this and close the recording. So, with all homage to Darth Vader's voice or CNN's voice, this is St. Louis LUG. This has been Thursday, September the 19th, 2024. Our speaker tonight was Sean Twiehaus. He did a wonderful presentation on modern terminals, KiTTY versus Wezterm. So we really appreciated it, and been a very interesting talk tonight. It'll be in the archive very soon. With that, thank you all for coming, and see you next time. Oh, our next meeting is next Tuesday. It is the new users log Tuesday night. Good night.
Right.
Take care.